What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Crossover Commerce. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is my corner of the internet where I bring the best and brightest in the Amazon and e-commerce space. What does that mean for you? Well, if you're a new listener, that means that you're going to get an action-packed episode of tips, tricks, and insights from the best minds in the Amazon and e-commerce space. Ones that you can apply to your sourcing logistics side of business, your marketing and advertising, product selection, to global growth, to localization, to cross-border payments, to even building out your advertising campaigns or direct-to-consumer, or just growing your brand philosophically. Or we've gone a lot of different ways on this podcast, but there's always lots of great information packed with it that you can apply to your business. And that's why we develop Crossover Commerce. So if you're watching this for the first time, you're catching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, we appreciate you tuning in live. And what live means is it's in fact going on right now. It is noon Eastern here in the United States. I believe it's on April 21st, Thursday, April 21st, episode 236. I think we were talking about 239. I'm already losing track of my episode number. So 239. Where we've had many guests come on live, chat with people who are tuning in on those channels. If you have a question, again, the trick is to go in the comment section on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, put your question below, or just let us know you're listening. That's always nice too. We like to know where people are tuning in, what questions you have, or just, a pleasantry is nice as well. So thanks for doing that ahead of time. If you listen to this on your favorite podcast nations, again, those are the Apple Podcasts, the Google Podcasts of the world, the Stitchers, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, we're also there too. Make sure you subscribe to those, write a nice review, or let us know what you think. Honest, truthful reviews are also helpful for us if you want to hear from a certain guest or a topic, or just let them know that the guest is amazing at what he does. So that's always nice to hear too. So make sure you do that on your favorite podcast destinations, or you can, of course, go to our presenting sponsor, usa.pingpongx.com/podcasts website. That's where all of the past episodes, both video, audio, transcripts, key takeaways, and resources that we talk about in every single episode. Those are where all of them live. Make sure you check those out as well if you happen to miss an episode, but we know you aren't. We know you're an avid listener if you're catching us again. So without further ado, enough about me, about our guest. As everyone knows, I love having, I consider everyone who gets through a podcast with me a friend of the show. Friends of my show are people that honestly, they don't leave or press the leave button on me, which is always nice, but they come on and say yes, and they want to provide value multiple times. It's very tricky, as you can maybe imagine, all the great minds in the space to get people back on, but there's always a select few that always need to get back on, whether it be a year or 15 months, whatever that might be, however long ago. They always are dropping great knowledge bombs on their own channels, so I need to get them on mine to share their insights as well. So when I post questions to people and I say, what do you want to talk about? Like, I know you're posting about so much, like, what do you want to call the episode? Well, this one is probably up there for tops of, not clickbaity, but ones that we're going to really leave a dangler until we get to the meat of it. The one Amazon advertising number no one talks about, but should, ... All right. That means, you know what that means. It means we're going to be learning about the things that you should be paying attention to in Amazon PPC. And of course, the person who's coming on is a friend of the show, the one, the only Elizabeth Green of Junglr. Elizabeth, welcome to Crossover Commerce, back since episode, I think I was saying 54. Gosh, it's been multiple hundreds of episodes since you've
something
been.
like that. Yeah, we were working before we got on live, and I'm like, I can't. It seems like just yesterday that you hit 100, and now you're more than double that. It's absolutely crazy. And kudos to you, because it's not easy to keep up momentum like that. And it's really obvious, if I was on sort of the beginning, and obviously not the early
I call yourself the beginning. You're the first half. First half is like the beginning.
First half. That's right. First half.
So I'm going to give a shout out to the person who I look up to the most, probably in the space that has done so many different great episodes and done probably the longest in the e-commerce space is Danny McMillan. And I was messaging him the other day and I said, man, you're at 600, and he has like Sharon Evan, he has Isabella um, on there too, and they have their own day as well. But they're at like 600 right now, and I said, I
That's
just had a
right.
simple
Yeah.
question. I go, when did you feel like that when it wasn't like not enough anymore? He goes, yeah, you'll hit it or feel like it when you hit 300 or something like that. And I go, okay, so I have to get to 300 and like so on and so forth, and
You're not too far
then
off
it starts to
though.
trickle and it starts to snowball there. So yeah, it's a lot. He did like something 60 something straight days on weekends and things like that. I keep mine at least to business days. So he has that on me. But hey, it's about you. We're not going to talk about other people. Danny's a friend of the show too. So I just want to say there's other people who are doing it way more than I am. So I just want to be a consistent voice in the space to help people learn and grow. But what have you been up to since we last chatted and you were on?
A lot of things. A lot of the same old, just still in accounts, still learning stuff, still testing things, which is fun. I hope I never fully get away from that. Looking at all of the new stuff coming. I mean, gosh, as it was a year ago, there's a lot that's happened in advertising over the year. I don't even know if I would be able to tell you every single thing because there's been so much. Um, yeah.
Going on. Yeah, there's news, there's new features. I feel like you're coming out with all these different, or you show the different features and
Mhm.
functionalities that Amazon's happened. I'm pretty sure like every organic placement has like disappeared since you've last topped on too. So it's all paid
Yeah.
at this juncture.
There's that, and that's definitely going to play into what we're talking about today for sure.
No, of course. And then what about the company? You guys have been still growing, you and your husband, or are you guys brought on
Yeah.
more people or
Yeah, definitely still growing. We have 9 team members now,
nice?
which just used to be a couple of us. So that's been really fun growing the team, getting people on who are honestly better than me. If I'm being perfectly frank, I have some really awesome account managers that like have taken some accounts and grown them. Like one of my team members, we were going over monthly numbers and like what's going on in accounts because I'm still kind of like over everything at this point,
Sure.
seeing what everyone's doing, making sure, juggling all the plates. And he had decreased a cost in tacos and grown sales. And I was like, dude, what did you do? That's an impossible feat. Tell me, tell me all the strategies. So
That's
that's
amazing.
been really cool just to grow the team out and like combine, make a huge conglomerate Junglr brain.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, like, anytime that you can be your own entrepreneur, I think like if you're responsible for yourself, but when you take that next level into having employees, people that report to you or you're
Mhm.
responsible for, I think that changes a mindset for a business. I feel like a lot of people would go through that. Did you feel that moment, or is it still kind of surreal that there's people that are working for you and the brand and the company?
It has been real. I mean, I'm definitely growing more as a person, I think, and learning all the how that motivate people and I'm Canada's generation is very lean to be able to be more strategic on things, mostly because I've juggled multiple accounts and so I want everyone to bring your genius brain, have time to really go through stuff. So it's been fun figuring out like how I want to do things, how I can find good people, how to kind of motivate people, keep everyone really excited about what we're doing.
That's amazing. Well, Elizabeth, just a little bit. I'm not sure if it's your side. You're a little pixely, so
I
we
think it
were
is.
breaking up a little bit there. Yeah, no, I just want to make sure you can hear me okay, but your answer was coming through
Yeah,
a
no,
little bit
you're good.
quickly. Okay, good. All right. I don't know if it's the format or whatever it is, but we're gonna press on a little bit. So that's awesome. Congrats on the success, the growth. Um, I'm curious from since you guys are strictly PPC focused, is this time of year, is this really a busy time of year? I would feel like it's very seasonal with hey, like you guys are probably prepping for what? Prime Day, a lot of things coming up for summer. Is there a seasonality to PPC? Like, is that a thing? I just personally want to know because I don't have my hands in the weeds every day like you do.
Yeah.
What's like the seasonality if there is or not?
So I would say for general accounts, before is going to be your like Prime Day, like Black Friday. Those are the ones that typically like apply to most accounts. But all accounts are going to have you have quite a few. So you have to, yeah, so there's some things in those accounts. There's other accounts we have that have like almost like their entire Q4 is on Mother's Day, and so those accounts definitely have seasonality, and we're in the weeds with that. I just had a call with a client this morning on like, all right, so what's our strategy, what are we doing for this, like really digging down and gearing up for that. So there's definitely seasonality involved. I would say how much it affects the account, it does depend on kind of like the category though.
Gotcha. You're gonna have to tell me what some of those things are because I just forgot that Mother's Day is coming up. So we're all gonna be shopping soon. This is a reminder to all you people. Make sure you go to Elizabeth's listings and buy all the products that they're promoting and click on the ads itself or the organics. I don't know which one you would rather prefer. Whatever makes you guys
Probably
look good,
organic, honestly. That's my goal to rank those.
If you can find the organic listing, you
Yes.
need to find it. So, not promoting any bad terms, but you'll have to. I'm curious what products those are. There's so many crazy things like how they overlay. It's so crazy to think of all these seasonal products. I mean, my wife and I's anniversary is coming up too. But when I look at every title and I look at every ad and whatnot, there's so much that they're attacking at they're attacking anniversary, they're attacking Mother's Day, they're attacking like just summer, spring, whatever. Like I do a lot of testing myself just to kind of see what's consistent across the board and what brands exist out there on Amazon. But it's funny how they all overlap and they try to attack this broad stroke. I'm not sure if this goes into our topic today, but I'm really curious. Last time we had you on, you talked about flat files, which was one of our most watched episodes here on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
So, lots of great content that you dropped there. Still today, ranking very well on YouTube for us. I'm curious. The cliffhanger is still killing me, and we're 12 minutes in. We haven't really talked about it yet. The one advertising number no one talks about, but should. I get confused sometimes by all the acronyms people throw around, tacos, advertising costs, all the fun stuff that might confuse someone starting off. Is this something that for beginners or intermediate or expert sellers, what are we going to be really focused on with this one thing? Is this for everyone?
I would say it would be important to track it as a beginner. It's
Okay.
not a number that should be confusing. I'll explain it today and go over like why it's important. Most people, when they start out, they're looking at ACOS in the beginning. When they first dive into Amazon advertising, like, all right, there's this number called ACOS and I need to figure out this for my ads. If you get a little more savvy, and I think even in the beginning, you can start tracking something called total ACOS, and you'll hear it as tacos.
Or tacos or whatever.
That's my favorite, tacos. I mean, how can you not love tacos?
That's true.
But that number tells you how your ads relate to your entire account. So ACOS is going to be strictly looking at ads in isolation. Like, all right, blinders on, like this is how my ads are doing, which is fine. If you look at it in the right context. So I'm all about like context and looking at things holistically and how do these numbers play into things and what do they mean? Trying to simplify that, clarify it for people. So ACOS, if you're not aware, is ad spend divided by ad sales. It's basically like, all right, so out of everything I spent on my ads, like how much, or out of everything I sold through my ads, what like piece of that had to be spent to generate those sales, basically. Sure. So if you're looking at tacos, that's ad spend divided by total sales, which if you followed my first kind of explanation, it's all right, so I have all of these sales that are like my entire account. This is organic and like ads combined. And then I look at what I spent on the ads and say, okay, out of everything, what like piece of that revenue had to go towards the ads to generate them. And so this number is going to be giving, again, I said a more holistic view. So it's not only looking at strictly just the ads with blinders on, because what we're seeing now is more and more competition. It's harder and harder to get like low ACOS numbers. So when it comes to that scenario, either you can put blinders on and like hyper focus on continuously getting low ACOS, which in some niches is next to impossible, if we're being honest. So
Right.
if you zoom out and you look at total ACoS numbers, it's still possible for an entire account to be very profitable, regardless of what your ACoS is doing. So if you look at ACoS, say, okay, so my ads are doing this, but like overall, like I'm doing well, I'm profitable, then you're probably fine. But there's one more number that can add even like more context to this, which is the number we're talking about. I call it ad sales percentage. You've heard of it as like maybe the ratio of your ad sales to your organic sales. I'm going to throw it out there and give it a name as ad sale percentage. But basically what you do is you look at your ad sales. So you're going into the ad account. You're not looking at spend at this point. You're looking at sales. And you take that number and you divide it by the total sales in your account. That's going to give you a decimal, which you can convert to a percentage. So basically you can say what percent of my total sales in my entire account is attributed to my ads. So what you're going to find with this number, so it's possible to have a really good ACoS and a really good tacos and still have like a very heavy reliance on the ads. And so all of these numbers like ACoS, tacos, ad sale percentage, they just tell you like how the account is doing. It doesn't give you context on like, okay, I need to fix this. This is broken. Like that goes into more like deeper level analysis. But these are like three numbers. If you kind of track them and watch trends, then it helps you better answer the question like how healthy is my account overall, factoring in ads.
So what's like that's really cool. I like that context of the percentage. So does this like, so walk me through, if I'm what's like an example for someone who doesn't look at these every single day? Can you provide maybe like a good and a bad scenario? So if I pull up and I'm listening to this as a seller and I'm going to say, okay, how do I either configure it, or where do I find it? How do I calculate it? What's a good and what's bad?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So as far as calculating, like I said, you'll want to go into your advertising console, and you'll just select whatever date range is. I would not select like up to today's date. You probably want to at least backdate it a couple days. So you find that gives you a little bit more accurate data.
Sure.
And then you'll pull whatever that number is for your ad sales, and then you'll go into the business reports. You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, so like exact same date ranges. And then you'll pull out those numbers for the same date range, calculate, and then just see what the percentage is. It's a good practice just to go and look and see what you've been doing. And you can have fun with it. Like go look at like last month versus this month. Like those kind of analysis are always great if you look at trends. But like I said before, what this number tells you is how reliant your overall account is to ads. Now, the tricky part is the numbers that we used to throw out as like, you never want to go past this or else like your account's not healthy. It was 70% coming from your organic and then 30% coming from the ads. Because Amazon has gotten so competitive, but mostly because like the top, they call it the top of the fold, which is basically like if you're on desktop, you have to scroll. So anything that's like above the scroll for your mobile as well. Anything that's kind of above the scroll, they call it above the fold. It's like a traditional marketing or advertising.
When you change it up above the scroll, I like it.
Yeah, above the scroll. But because that placement has less and less organic spots, so it used to be like you would have probably 3 spots at the top that would be organic, and you might have 2 ads and like some stuff below it. Now, like there's some search pages, I don't even know if there is any organic spot.
I did it the other day. The first 7 spots that you see of products are all sponsored. I think it's below 7 is when you get the first organic, and that's still hard, and that's category dependent for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely category dependent. So because there's just less and less spots to get organic, like right at the top, you're just naturally going to see more and more of the sales on those search pages coming from ads, because people are kind of conditioned. Oh, that's what I want. They're going to click around at the top. It's a lot of people.
I was gonna say, or the other thing is like no one's even paying attention to this is a paid ad anymore. I always jokingly tell my wife, I said, "Oh, look, you clicked on a paid ad," and she goes, "I don't know where there isn't one anymore, Ryan." And she like snips at me and I go, "I mean, you're right. Like there isn't anywhere else." I was like, "You're costing people money. Like how dare you?" I say 3 cents, but everyone knows it's like probably 50 or $1 or $3.
At least,
I was like, "You cost somebody some money somewhere." I jokingly said that. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. There's more, and the shoppers are becoming so conditioned to have like, brands and then like the video, and it's all over the place. So they're just like, oh, it's all the search page, not recognizing. I mean, the only indication that it's sponsored placement is like a little gray sponsor, and like that wording or that lettering is so small, especially on mobile. It's virtually undetectable. So like I said before, we used to say like, oh no, 70-30, like that's as far as you wanted to get. Now we're seeing that sway more and more, probably to a 60-40, but honestly, it depends on how competitive your space is. Because with all this competition coming in, oftentimes for you to maintain your ranking on specific keywords, you might have to maintain a really heavy ad presence on that search. And
True.
a lot of times we'll find that if we decrease the ads because we're wanting to just like, generate all the sales off our organic, all of a sudden our placement slips and we're losing the organic as well. So we just naturally have to continue to push that. And that's the name of the game. But that means that we're still going to start to generate a lot of our sales through the ads. And so our ratios are going to go up. So you'll see even in hyper competitive categories, you'll still have those accounts that are very healthy and they're getting that 70-30 split. However, you will see categories now that are up to like say 50-50 split. And as long as, you're still generating profits from the account, like that's what it always comes back to is profits. So if we decrease our ads, your organic slips and total sales go down, the end resulting profits or what you're getting in the bank at the end of the day may actually decrease, even though like a lot of other numbers look healthy. So you still should be tracking like total sales, how everything's working, like how are my sales numbers? Like that's a really, really important thing. That's why we get access to business reports, because we want to be able to go in and check that ourselves. Like, okay, so we made these aggressive changes on the ads. Like how is that reacting in the total account?
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's why it's so crazy to think like, I look at this as a business context, and what people look at was considering a brand is quote unquote profitable, and to put a number on it, I think is very difficult, because I don't know, when you look at it individually, if I'm an aggregator or someone who's looking at a business model and saying, hey, what's the value of your business? Well, if they say 50, if you see 50-50, and a lot of people are like, oh, they're heavily dependent. Like they clearly don't know how to rank their product, or, how to enhance their imagery or whatever it is. But you have to dig deeper. You're like, oh, this is actually a really competitive category. A lot of people, the only placements at the top of the page, like you said, first 7-10, whatever it is. It could be all ads. And that's, if people are finding on new business and they're winning new business, that's actually a completely different news story than if you just look at the split, which is really difficult. So how do you break it down of dependency? Do you look at it as like cost of acquisition? It is one of those numbers. Is it the ad sales percentage, or what are the ones that are actually telling, the numbers that are pointing to the real truth of this is a successful brand, versus like, oh, these people are like, they have no idea what they're doing and they're just pumping money, and it's only supported on this one leg of 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That analysis would probably be a little bit deeper than like these numbers look good, I think. So I would be coming at it like I evaluate brands all the time. Like before we onboard someone, like I'm doing an audit. I don't care how great you tell me your brand is, like unless
Sure.
I dig in there and like find
Has
something.
anyone ever come to you and go, we suck, we're really bad at what we do, you need to help us? Like, has anyone like been truthful and like, we just are not
There's a
good?
lot of brands that come to me like there's a couple people I find, especially when they're the ones managing it themselves.
Okay.
I've had a lot of people say like my stuff is a mess, and honestly, I'll go in there. I'm like, dude, I've seen worse. I've seen much worse. Like,
That's the best
trust
compliment I
me.
think any entrepreneur can get. Is like, I've seen worse. Like,
Yeah.
that's not
No,
the worst thing you can
I've
expect, right?
seen I've seen some crazy doozies in my stint of looking at accounts, which has been a while now. So I think it has to go back to a lot more of like, are you ranking on certain keywords? I guess the thing that would worry me is if you had a very heavy ad presence and you had absolutely no visibility organically. That would be, or like no keyword rankings
Yeah.
outside of what you can generate from ads. That would be worrisome. Yeah, I guess I would say that would be the main thing. So the thing that I find the most helpful in looking at these three numbers together is ACOS and tacos, and then looking at them in relation to the ad sale percentage is what I find oftentimes. I mean, tacos and ACOS definitely tell you profitability on certain numbers. Like tacos will tell you overall account profitability in relation to ads, and ACOS will tell you overall, account profitability isolation of just the ads.
Mhm.
And you'll hear it all the time, like I need to decrease ACOS and I need to decrease tacos. And that may often be a factor because if you're dealing with low profitability, then yes, you probably should make sure that your account is profitable. However, one thing is if you are significantly or you're very reliant on the ads to generate total sales in your account, what I found is that if you go after things aggressively, because typically speaking, like the quickest way to decrease tacos or ACOS is to limit your ad spend because it's ad spend divided by ad sales. So in an ideal world, if I can like cut my ad spend in half, like I would cut my ACOS in half. The balancing act on that is that if you cut ad spend, oftentimes you can cut ad sales as well. And if it's a division problem and you reduce both sides of the division, like it ends up at the same number. So people who are not really like going in there and being very strategic with it and just like cutting everything across the board can end up like, I just cut my sales in half and I'm getting the same ACOS. I have the same profitability, but less, like at the end of the day, the numbers don't work out. So what can happen if you're looking at it like, and so we're thinking of like, okay, so total sales in the account and like we have 50 or like, I mean, in some accounts, I've seen like 60, 70% is coming from the ads. So if I'm so reliant on ads and I really go through and I decrease what I'm doing in the ads, I'm affecting 70% of the total sales in my account. And so for those accounts, those are honestly the most difficult is when you have high ACOS, high tacos, and a high reliant on ads because we need to fix what's going on in the ads. But honestly, the best fix for that is getting more organic visibility because you're trying to push organic. But that's a very even for me, and I know what I'm doing, and I know how to be strategic with it, and I know how to go in and dissect an account very well. It's still a tightrope. It's still a very incremental tightrope to walk, and one that I feel like we're getting more and more comfortable as we're seeing more and more of these scenarios. It's just, so I've been having to have a lot of very frank discussions with brand owners because I'll have someone come in that say like my ACOS is high, my tacos is high, we need to fix this. And I'll go into the account and say, if we go hyper aggressive on reducing what we're doing with ads, I don't see this playing out good long-term for your brand. I mean, you can go find someone else and they'll say, oh, I'll decrease ACOS and I'll like fix all these bleeding keywords. But if you're not really able to influence and get better organic visibility, you're just reducing your visibility on the platform overall. And like long-term, that doesn't play out well for your brand. So that's why I think it's really, really important to track this number because it just makes you aware of the struggles and things that you have to navigate in your account versus just saying like, oh, ACOS and tacos is high and decreasing it. And like, oh my gosh, my total sales went down by like 50%. What's going on? And, then you freak out and you push ads and it ends up being this, anything you ping pong and do like very massive swings suddenly tends to not work out so well long-term.
Well, and the ratios are. This is why I feel like PPC people are the most underpaid in the industry, and I'm gonna give you a little prop here because of the kind of example that you just laid out. It's a mad scientist role of constantly tweaking and adjusting and fine tuning. It's almost like a mechanic's role of, hey, I can put your car back together, but like every little car is different. Everything you have to tweak to make sure it runs optimally, and that changes because if you hit a bump in the road, like it throws the whole system off and you have to constantly change and know what that is. And that's why like I think people should pay everyone in the agencies like at least double what they're getting, what you guys are probably charging. So this is my testimonial out there. Everyone should be paying Elizabeth and Junglr and everyone in the PPC space more because it is so crazy. I think I was another kind of route I wanted to take with this is ratios. You have to make sure your ratios also make sense too, because it's not just a money problem like you had mentioned. It's you can have all the money in the world, but if you're scaling a business, I think Mina Elias, when I heard him talk about PPC in this context, it made me really open up. Of if I spend $10,000 on ad spend, and I get $100,000 in sales. Like there's your
Mhm.
ratio. Like I'm spending 10,000 to get 100,000.
Mhm.
If I put, then theoretically, what, $100,000 in sales in, I should, in theory, exceed a million. What is that? I forget the ratio is. I've already told myself $1 million and $1 million in sales. But if that ratio is the same, like throughout, you should be gaining more sales percentage of sales instead of, hey, they should be the same ratio depending on how much money you put in. Does that make sense? Like when you put
Yeah.
in same amount, you should, in theory, also see that ratio grow with it or even surpass it. Do you have that conversation all the time with people of like, even it might be that level, people are like, well, I should see myself grow, but the ratio is still the same. You're not seeing actual growth. You're seeing, because you're putting more money into it, you're getting more sales out of it, but there's no actual growth happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I do see that scenario. So like the nuance, and I think why it gets so like the ability to be very strategic is important, is the fact that we're not just like dump. It's not like say Facebook ads where you have an audience that you can just like dump more money in and the audience just scales and like everything's good.
Sure.
At the base level, what's happening is we're bidding on keywords, and those keywords have specific search volume. So like all marketing, like all advertising, definitely relies on market, but especially Amazon advertising, because we don't actually generate market. Like there's other more like visual platforms where you can kind of say, okay, I want these general people, and I'm just, as long as I can find those people and I can just pay for more of them, like I can continuously like grow whatever market I'm getting into. With Amazon, it's all keyword based and it's keyword searches. If we're talking on platform, and so as many people are typing in those keywords, that's the market cap. And it doesn't matter how much you bid on a specific keyword. If there's no more market on that keyword, like there's no more market on that keyword. You literally can't spend it. Like there's certain keywords you could throw, like try and throw hundreds of dollars at a specific keyword, thousands. And if there's only like 300 people searching them a month, there's only 300 people searching them a month.
Right.
So it definitely comes down to like picking good keywords. And, there are ways to definitely scale Amazon advertising. Like you definitely can scale things, but it depends on the product and the market and like how much you can scale specific things. And then it goes back to really honestly, if you're trying to grow an account on Amazon, if you're trying to grow a brand, it is about getting additional products and launching additional products to go.
I have a question, and this is kind of, I'm in a very theoretical
Go ahead.
headspace today.
I love theoretical.
Because keyword is relevance and it's always in the eye of the beholder, would it ever be beneficial or would it be detrimental if there was a survey or one question of, did, after you search for this product, did you receive relevant products? Is this product relevant to your search? I would say product or products, because it can get kind of crazy. You don't want to like use this as a black hat thing down the road, but is this search or these products relevant to what you're trying to look for? And like whether it's at checkout or how you check out, or like, did you find everything you were looking for today? Blah
Mm-hmm.
blah 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 blah. If Amazon ever announced something like that, would that enhance or would that be more detrimental to PPC people like yourself? Like it would be like a feedback loop of like, oh, this was not helpful. So Amazon's like, well, maybe that product doesn't match the keyword that at the beginning of their search towards the end of their search. Maybe they don't actually line up. So that's kind of it's on the audience member. Is that
Yeah.
something that would ever happen, or do you think would ever happen?
So they're definitely doing relevancy calculations on the back end, I'm sure. And you can infer certain things, like for instance, like frequently bought togethers are very
Sure.
interesting to dig into. So there are ways that we can infer relevancy. One of my favorite ways to infer relevancy is very manual. But like if I need to do very deep keyword analysis, I'll go and search. I still go and search pages, like incognito window, try and be as clean as possible. I'll search up because ideally, like Amazon is very interested in giving their customers a good quality experience. If you're searching for something, they want you to be able to find it. Like they're not interested in like burying what you're looking for on page 5. So what you'll find is most times things that have very good conversions, they have very good interactions with shoppers, people like them, people click them, people buy them, those ones will rank better on the search page. And so what
Of
I'll do is
course.
I'll just search it and I'll see what comes up on those search pages, primarily looking at the organic placements and just sort of infer through that what shoppers are looking for when they type in this keyword. So there's ways to kind of look into that. I mean, I would love to get
Is that
that
based
data.
on? Yeah, no, that's great insight, and obviously manual. Is that how's that based on? Like, from my marketing brain, I'm always used to last click attribution. How would
Yeah.
Amazon attribute keyword to purchase? Is it based upon whatever's being searched for? They get down to that product, and that's whenever click to cart was, whatever was last search. Is that the relevancy keyword, or what? How do they are attributing to that?
So that's a bit of, there's a really, really interesting like search query. It's inside Brain Analytics. If you go in Brain Analytics at the top, you'll see a green bar with a button, and it's like search query, and I'm forgetting the last word. That gives you actual search volume from Amazon first party data, which is amazing. Never had that before. They have a rank. It's like one of the two columns that you can't hide in there. And if you go and you look at the explanation on rank, so basically what this does is it gives you all of the searches relative to your brand. So it's aggregated on a brand level, which is kind of annoying. Like the bigger your brand, the less you're going to be able to pull out of it. But it gives you all of the searches, like their search volume on them. And then a bunch of other data points, but one of them is ranking. And I did like a whole deep dive with Michael. I'm super interested when that podcast comes out. I'm gonna like send it to my whole team. But we like spent like an hour and a half going through all of them, and it was like, what's this ranking? Because it's not sorted by search volume. And basically what it was saying is these are what we identify as the best searches for your brand. And if you go and you read what their definition is of ranking, they give you some of the factors in there. So it's click-through rates, it's add to carts, it's obviously conversions, but they actually say impressions in there, which I found super interesting. So we were kind of speculating, like there are times where like you'll pause a bunch of things in the ad console and they weren't really bringing you sales anyways. Like if you look at lifetime, they're not doing anything, but you'll actually sort of see like things decrease in the account. So we're like, at some level, they're actually just tracking how many eyes you got on your products. So it's a bit of a black box. From our understanding, it's definitely like relevancy. And I do believe they calculate relevancy like by how much shoppers interact with your product in relation to keywords. But I mean, their back end and what they have for their algorithm, like how many resources they have and like how like specific they gotten, and like they know their shoppers very well at this point. Like Amazon knows their
Yeah.
shoppers and they're doing the best that they can to strategically target those shoppers. So my guess is like even like interactions like from search page to clicking on another product, like there's a lot of different factors swirling.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's that's interesting that they're actually giving the data for impressions. That's very old school in terms of, how many eyeballs
Yeah.
are you're seeing versus conversion, and you're ultimately looking at conversion rate. So all those kinds of things in terms of if they're kind of like maybe they're testing it in that capacity, it'd be unique to
Yeah.
see if that's what they're looking at. I was just mainly thinking that I'm just going through like the buyer's journey of at what juncture, is there going to be feedback on not just on just hey, like review rating your product, but also like
Mm.
how did you get to the product quicker? Like almost like how did you hear about us? Did you
Yeah.
click on our Instagram ad? Did you click on like you just came to the app or whatever? Or like what was the reason? And be curious to know like as that separation of power starts to happen, like intent
Mm.
to buy gets more insight to how do you develop the advertising technologies around that. Like, hey, I was watching TV and then something clicked
Mm.
and I had to buy something. Like very unique and nuanced stuff, but that would go into like advertising on Amazon Prime platforms
Mm-hmm.
or like video
Right.
or hey, like how do we get in front of different people in that context too. Um Kind of go into different advertising platforms on Instagram. I know that a couple times when you follow you see paid spots of like products on Amazon, like a carousel of 10 products and
Mhm.
whatnot. Is that something that Amazon does, or is that something you guys can specifically do as an agency? How does that work
I'm trying
in
to
field?
remember. So I know so there inside the ad console, there's something called sponsor display ads. I don't think those get those placements. I know they do have placements off of Amazon, which goes into like Amazon, like they have their own like web inventory, and then they also have access to like web inventory of other sites that they've partnered with. So there is some off Amazon placements for that, and there is some on Amazon placements, like particularly if you do like product targeting, that's definitely going to be on platform. But there's options to target off of platform as well. I'm trying to remember what's available in the DSP. I don't
Because it's weird because
know that off the
I
top of
think
my head.
it's Amazon's, like if you follow their Instagram account,
Right. Yeah.
sometimes it's not just from their account, it's just sponsored, but it's a collection of products. It's not even relevant to my search query or anything like that. It's almost like a, hey Ryan, you search for a lot of random stuff. Here it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's something about where my search. Again, I use my own personal one for doing research projects, and that's where I get screwed of my algorithms. But yeah, when that happens, it's fascinating to think that there's a lot of repeat ones, almost like they're trying to retarget. But then also you see a lot of interesting different ones, like high end products as well. So it's almost how do we direct people? It's really cool. I think it's fascinating. Of on the carousel, the product description comes in and I'm like, oh, that's cool. What does that do? And it's intriguing. Obviously, click gets to product page,
Yeah.
but it's only from Amazon's stuff. So I didn't know if that was if an agency can do something
I
like
know
that.
it's definitely not on platform. There's a bunch of like interesting like beta programs or exclusive programs too. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the Instagram ones. I know I ran across that question before and dug into it. I wouldn't be able to give anyone accurate information. So I'll probably just
It's just fascinating to see like them try to test the paid ads on Instagram and Facebook still,
Yeah.
trying to get people on.
I know they definitely have, and they're heavily, I would say heavily promoting, but they've mentioned it quite a few times, having like inventory on Twitch that I know you can actually target from sponsor display in the ad console. So if you have something that you think appeals to Twitch viewers, you can target them.
Lots of electronics, and yeah, a lot of like, gosh, I get like microphone stuff, like I get podcast stuff all the time, and it's all because of my search queries. Thanks YouTube, thanks Google for selling that those search functionality. So in that capacity, I just want to give a shout out to a couple of people. Marie, thanks so much. Elizabeth's amazing and expert in her I think she meant field, but she probably might be a friend too. Yeah, you're friends too. I was gonna say hits with both. Thank you, Lena, for listening to this, and Ivan giving us a thumbs up. So everyone, thanks for listening on LinkedIn, and Facebook and YouTube as well. A couple more questions, Elizabeth, as I'm kind of wrapping up before you have to jump into your busy part of the day. For the future, obviously, I think a lot in the past year, 2+ years, a lot of people have complained like increasing costs of just like where costs were many years ago versus now. Have you ever gotten to the bottom, or is there a general thought why prices continue to increase? Is it just because of inventory? Is it because of just competition? A lot of people said, oh, it's like aggregators and they're just throwing a bunch of money. I personally don't believe that. I just want to kind of hear your take on, like, why do you think costs continuously rise? Will we continue to see that kind of sort of and move forward with it?
Yeah. So my thinking is it's probably all the above. Like it's not for people who have only had exposure to Amazon and Amazon advertising might think like, oh my goodness, it's an Amazon thing. Like Amazon's trying to squeeze us out. Like where our profits are going down, the shipping and then like inventory fulfillment and all the above. Like it's just getting harder and harder. And it's not Amazon necessarily trying to squeeze you. It's honestly that any ad platform that matures, you're going to see rising costs. Like if you go into any other groups on Facebook, on Google, on Instagram ads, like I'm sure TikTok is new, but as that one matures, you're going to see a rise of costs as well. Like it's just kind of a natural progression, unfortunately, because there's a lot of like OG sellers who are like bemoaning the days of like 10-cent cost per clicks on top keywords. Like that's like who knows, maybe something could explode, but I don't see that ever coming back. And I don't think it's bad to like remember where we came from in the good old days, but also like don't pine so much that you miss out on what's happening now, I guess I would say. And I think it's also a function of just a lot of the organic spots being pushed out, and just even back a couple years ago, you would hear people like, oh, wait, do I need to run PPC? Is this a thing? And now you're seeing more and more new sellers get into it. Like, oh, I have to do this. Like, this is a definite piece of selling on Amazon more. And there's less and less categories where you can get away with, just throwing up the product and it just works. I mean, I think there's some very niche sub places that just don't have enough volume for any of the big players to even mess with yet. There's still those deep corners of Amazon that it still kind of has old school in them. And if you can find them and you're okay with maybe a little bit lower volume, I'm sure you can do well. But it is a function of bigger players getting in. It's a function of Amazon pushing more and more towards the ability to sell like brand stories, being able to like own your brand on the platform, which traditionally had pushed away a lot of big players because they're like, we can't own our products, so we can't share our brand story, we can't build our brand. So Amazon's acutely aware of that, and you'll notice with more of like the creatives being pushed out, they want to give that ability back to brands, which is wonderful. It means that we have more to do, but it also means that it does appeal to a lot of the big players as well. So you're seeing that come in. So I think it's kind of like an all the above scenario, not necessarily one pinpointed thing.
Right. And I like to say, like, it's a cost of doing business, even as much as Jassy or Jeff Bezos will claim that PPC is an optional add-on feature and not a necessity, which we all agree is not correct, because of how everything's laid out. In that capacity, if someone's starting off, or they're listening to us, or they're thinking, my gosh, like what do I need to like plan for when it comes to cost for advertising? Do you go by percentage, or you go by like flat amount per month? Or like, I know you're going to say it depends. I'm trying to avoid that. It depends.
It
Answer.
depends.
Is it like, is it a healthy, like, is there like formulas, or is there something where tools I can go into and say, like, I can forecast, this is what I want to make, this is what search functionality is, this is what cost per click is. If you're healthy, this is what it's going to cost. Is there something like a formula or a spreadsheet or something that you have developed, or someone has put together that you can kind of lead them down that path and like prepare them for it?
Yeah, so I can, if you don't mind me plugging someone else's podcast. I actually did a podcast episode with Michael from Ad Badger, and we actually went through, he threw it together, but I was helpful on it, and we talked over like forecasting spreadsheets. So that might be helpful. I know he put out the resource, and you can go and copy it and forecast. Yeah, so there's definitely, at the end of the day, it's math. So we had that discussion, and you'll ask a lot of advertisers, like, what can I expect? Or, what can I expect for it? And it's a completely reasonable question, I think. Like, and we obviously have like a lot more experience in that. So for us to like, oh yeah, you have to do this, this, and this. The reason why when you go to a lot of advertisers, you're like, what can I expect? If I spend this, do I do this? Is that there's a lot of variables that it's hard to predict. And as we like, you can build out the forecast models. Like, again, at the end of the day, it's math. Like, you go through and say, okay, my spend is determined by, spend is determined cost per clicks times clicks. How many clicks do I need to run this? How much does that cost? That's my ad spend. Like, you can do that. Your variable is your cost per click. And then like your performance variable is going to be like, how well does my product convert? Because you can multiply by how many clicks, and then what's my conversion rate, and then you just like, you can forecast it again. But you're doing off of like cost per clicks can vary, and your conversion rate definitely can vary, especially right out of the gate. So there's like two variables that like, okay, like how well is this going to work? So we actually built like, okay, so there's like a pessimistic model, like a moderate, and then like, all right, this is when everything goes well, you can expect those numbers. So I think it's, like I said, you can definitely build out those models. My recommendations in going in, if you're like, I'm starting PPC and I have no idea where to start, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, like go through, if you're in the beginning, I would go through and look at, what keywords are in your space. I would go after that relevancy. Like, I would go and search them. If you got the time, like, go search them, see what shows up. Try and get hyper specific to your product. the more you can like get in front of shoppers who are actually looking for what your product is, typically the better your performance is going to be.
So instead
Because
of broad, go specific.
yeah, yes. So instead of broad, go specific. Take a realistic look at what you can spend. Don't say, oh, I need to spend this. If you don't have the money in the bank, you don't have the money in the bank, and be
Yeah, that
okay
money,
with
once
that.
you pay it, it's gone.
Yes,
It's not
because what
an
you're going
investment.
to do is you're going to spend a lot of money and then you're going to freak out and you're going to pause everything. And you're basically going to have wasted that money, where it's much better in the beginning just to pick a handful of keywords that you can afford to run on. The more you can run on something like 20 in a 24-hour period and continuously versus like running at a budget, at 9 a.m., you're going to get much better data feedback, much better results overall for those. So like figure out what you can do, be fine, focus on relevancy.
Does Amazon, do they reward or do they punish people depending on the ones they start with versus like almost like a legacy, how they build it out? Like if I need to make sure that they're perfect in the beginning or like really relevant in the beginning, because as I build, they'll know that it's consistent. There's track records, stuff like that. Does Amazon look at where you start with your campaigns, like at the very beginning of your brand, or do they just say like whenever they start, however, depending on how relevant it is, that's where we look at? I know it seems
So
very out there, but like,
I would say yes and no. And this is all inferring off of like, I've seen these trends and this seems to work.
sure.
So like take everything with a heaping dose of salt.
Yes, it
Um,
depends.
yes,
That's the
it
answer for
depends.
every PPC expert. It depends.
But I would say yes and no. So it's not necessarily like how you build out your campaigns. Like, because I've seen really crappy, messy campaign structures work, and it's annoying that it works, but sometimes it just does. So it's not necessarily like, don't worry, like I have to have like the perfect campaign structure. I'm gonna have everything figured out, like it's all there. It's mostly going back to like what they're trying to do is gauge how shoppers interact with your product on the platform, and how they're finding your products is through search pages, and how you get to those search pages is by targeting specific keywords. So if you get to a specific search page through a targeted keyword, and maybe you don't pick like a really great keyword, and so the shopper doesn't really interact with your product very well because it's not what they were looking for, you might sort of have some like poor performance signals, where if you were like better targeted, people did have a good relationship with your product, and to where you're showing up on the platform, then that'll signal like, oh, people like this product. So the more you can give signals like, hey, Amazon, people like my stuff, they're buying it, like that's where you're going to see a really good performance.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Would you ever, and kind of like, again, in the last couple of minutes I have with you here, do you ever think like that degree of separation, like you said, it all depends. Like if you work like, hey, I want this product to be purchased, and you start to build on those layers, I would think the external layer for another PPC would be, hey, anything that's from outside of Amazon, bring it into Amazon, and from into Amazon, you're like driving into consumer. Do you have that roadmap, or is that something that interests you or the team, or are you guys working on that, or is that something you're like, that's not our expertise, like a Google or Pinterest or something like that?
Yeah. So that stuff does interest me. I will be the first to admit that's not my area of expertise when it
Sure.
comes to it. So
No one's an expert.
mostly
We're all
because,
just figuring it out as we go.
yeah, so I would love to figure out, like right now I'm digging into Walmart ads for fun as a favor to a client, because I
Nice.
want to figure out the platform. So like learning those nuances. So I do like to like keep an ear to the ground and figure it out. Those ones come with their own nuances, like as every ad platform is going to have its nuances. Like I'll have people come in, from like the Google world and say, this is how you should set up campaigns. I'm like, well, the way there's like little nuances to Amazon, and that particular approach doesn't actually work on the platform as well.
What's
So
the
what you
most
need,
cohesive? Have you found the most cohesive? Like, is it Google that's most like Amazon, or is it Facebook, or what's the platform that's most similar
yeah,
to Amazon?
so definitely Google, if you're doing pay per click, will translate very well to Amazon, because you're still like aware of pay per click platforms, how they work, like how the keywords are targeted. Typically, they have like kind of the same match types. There's a couple different nuances, but it's
Sure.
very, very similar. So you'll be able, like your learning curve is not going to be as steep.
That makes sense. What about is any relevancy to like a TikTok where there's not like a search functionality, it's just like relevancy? Is there any sort of like overlap there for you?
So that one I have not explored at all. Honestly, I had the TikTok app myself just to like, because I like the app. I literally
You're
had
a
to
user,
delete
it's
it
fine.
because it was like, oh, such a time suck. It was so good. It's so bad. So I literally deleted the app because I just
I did
I
too. I
can't.
had to do it just for my own sanity, and I can't
Yes.
handle another thing. So I love talking about it. I don't use it, but I know enough where I get thrown to TikTok anyway. So
Yeah.
it's just I don't have time to do it, and I want to work in my lane right now. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
intriguing. I've always I'm curious how people's like how their minds work in that capacity of as a business. Is there a place that if it intrigues you enough, would you dive into Walmart ads as a business, like as a
Yeah.
service, or what was you said as a favor to a client? What's kind of that next
Mhm.
step as you guys grow?
So it's as a favor to client and just see how that platform performs. There's some interesting nuances to it. I told my client, I was like, oh, you got in at a very good time because it used to be what do they call it? I think it's like a first party auction where basically so with Amazon, it's like you pay only 1 cent more than whatever the next
The max
highest
bid or whatever
bidder.
it is. Yeah, yeah.
So originally on the Amazon or on the Walmart platform, it was you paid like whatever. If you bid $5, you pay $5 a click if you won the spot. If you paid, so you didn't know. It was really hard to gauge, and there's like no real data on like what the competition's doing. So it's really hard. Those pay-per-click auctions have a really hard time with just sellers not really feeling safe spending a lot of money on those platforms. So they are migrating it to very similar auction to Amazon. Like that just happened. I want to say this last quarter or so. I have to get back with the rep and make sure. She's like, oh, it's coming. Should be this quarter. And then we were looking at the calendar. We're like, oh, it's the first day of the second
Of the
quarter.
quarter.
So I'm thinking that officially got rolled out as an update. I have to go dig into the literature. So it's definitely a platform that I think is interesting. It's not going to be as big as Amazon advertising anytime soon, if we're being perfectly honest. But I think it just makes sense for me to be aware of other platforms like that are again very similar. So yeah, I find that interesting. As far as us and what we're doing, to me, probably expanding myself and my knowledge a lot more on more of the nuances that are outside Amazon advertising. So, for instance, we're testing out a new tool right now that actually gives us access into like inventory and how that affects sales and
Mm.
what's like, what kind of like inventory and like buy box percentages and unit session percentages and what's the sessions going, like things that are not anywhere in the realm of Amazon advertising. However, they definitely have a major impact on how what we're doing is performing. So I think at least for me, that's my current focus is not necessarily only looking at myself as like an ad, a part of like someone's ad piece, but then like helping them, because if my sellers grow their accounts, well, that behooves me in the long run. I can help them sort of like understand what's going on and add that ad piece in that fits nicely into what they want to do as a brand. I think that's where I'm interested in results. So I'm interested in like helping, learning, growing, facilitating whatever helps me get the best results.
Absolutely. Well, we don't know this too. I always have to remind myself it's not just advertising that has an effect on ranking too. It also
Yeah.
has inventory levels, where
Mhm.
in the country your product actually gets stored. All
Yeah.
these things, which again, I can go back to what we talked about. Danny McMillan, he talks about this in one of his podcasts. Of you have to think about too on the algorithm level of when you start to launch your products of conversion rates at the very beginning, and then like 80%, you might think, oh, that's really great, but if you're starting at 100 and it goes down to 80, you just dropped 20%. So it's starting to think like, oh, you're right, like I can't, it's just in theory, if Amazon just looks at pure numbers, they're like, well, something dropped in 20%, now it's not as relevant anymore, so like drop to the lower. Same with inventory. If it can't fulfill in 2 days, do you want to serve it to the person in
Mhm.
Idaho or in Oregon if it's located in a warehouse in Ohio? Maybe not. So it's kind of all, if you're low on inventory, suppresses. If you're It all makes sense is what I'm getting at. Is I think all those things have
Mhm.
factors in making this one big puzzle
Yeah,
more
absolutely. I
more
mean,
in view.
so there's an option now that if you have inventory being processed in Amazon, it's not necessarily eligible for fulfillment, but it is being processed. It will show viable now if you have something like I think it's called like Head Start, and it's like a toggle switch
Mm,
in your account. We do have some clients that find that they do get enough sales from that program that it makes sense for them to keep it on. However, because ship times show up like 2 weeks out, that's probably fine for organic because they're still getting like they're getting enough sales from it to make it sense for them. It doesn't make sense for us to advertise it because we tend to get
sure.
much poorer results. So we need to be aware of like the clients that are using that and how far out our ship times are, to be able to just make good intuitive decisions on the ad side.
Absolutely. And also it'd be interesting too if you could serve ads to something where you need it based upon immediacy as well.
Mm.
Like if you need I know grocery would be an easy way, or something you have to have tangible, like a giftable item potentially. Nothing like obviously huge with furniture or something heavy, but you would think of how can I get something like today instead of like running out to the store and spending all that time away. You would think that there would be ads that you can serve for, hey, get it now within an hour or two.
That would be
If you
interesting. Yeah, I'll be interested to know. So there are really interesting platforms out there that look at your ranking, like geo rankings. There are some platforms that do calculate that, and I've looked at them, and I'm like, oh, it's really interesting because your product will rank different, and depending on the locations, just due to like what ship times and stuff. However, I looked at it; it was super interesting. There's absolutely nothing I can do about that. Like,
yeah,
as much as I'm like, oh, great, we're ranking really well in like California, we should put like, there's no
send
ability
it
for
all to
me to like
California.
push
Exactly.
in those markets. And so it will be very interesting to see if that capability gets, I mean, if that capability gets rolled out, it will make my life way more complex. But the people who can figure it out are going to get a massive advantage. So I'm like, hear no whisperings of that rolling down the pike. It would be interesting if it did. We'll see.
I agree. Stay tuned. There's always something new that's coming out. So, with that being said, Elizabeth, I would steal more of your time, but I know you're a busy person. If they want to get in touch with you, I know we've linked out to you before. What's the best way to do it? Is it LinkedIn or is there email? What's the best way?
Yeah, so if you're interested in like my brain on PPC and just seeing what I'm talking about, LinkedIn's going to be the best place to follow. Feel free to message me on there. If you would like to see about working with us, the best place is going to be the website, which is Junglr, JUNGLR.com. And then form at the bottom to book a call. I'm still doing the intake, so you'll get in touch with me. We can talk about your ads, see if we can help.
That's all right. I loved it. The message that you sent me too. I've shared it every episode since you messaged me of like, Ryan, I think our episode, it might have gone, I don't know even how it turned out. Hopefully, is that a client now that we talked about from before?
I
Or
don't
yes,
remember. I'll have to go
stay
back and
tuned.
look at my lead at
Look at
my
that.
lead. Yes, but definitely,
Yeah,
yeah. So I'd been getting a couple pings from Google searches because I have on there like, where'd you hear about us? And I guess it came from Google, but they
it's
said they
true.
found
I
me
even
through
tried it
your
myself.
podcast.
It's
And I was
very
like,
true.
oh, cool.
I was so
Anytime.
stoked to hear this. That's my dream, is to say like we drove other people clients just from happenstance years ago. And this is the first one, and I'm like, it's finally happening. And I got really
It's
excited about
here.
it. So the day
That's
has finally
awesome.
come.
Well, I got excited about it.
I
So
produced enough I was gonna say, like, you're welcome. I was like, I finally produced enough content. I'm taking over the e-commerce search algorithm.
there you go.
Finally. No, but
Yes.
hey, I appreciate it. Anytime you're again friend of the show. I know I message you for random stuff all the time. We're gonna get up. We're gonna meet each other in person at some juncture.
Sometime,
Some juncture. I don't
someday.
know what it is,
I'm so
but
much of a homebody.
hey, me too.
So
They're kicking me out the door. They're saying, "Hey, do you want to go to New York?" Never mind. That's not a question. You're going to New York, so I was like, "All right,
you
guess I'm
don't get
going
a
to New
choice.
York."
That's the
Yeah,
problem is I make my own decisions and I'm like,
I know
oh,
you're an entrepreneur. I work for people, but no, it's good to see people in person.
yes, I
I
agree.
told people it's just like when I was at Prosper and I got to meet like the David Dayons of the world and
Mhm.
all these different people, and you were like, "All right, let's talk for an hour like we do on the podcast."
Yeah.
Nope, it's like 5 minutes and then we're all sprinting across the rooms to other people. It's almost like more anxiety inducing to see people in person than it is like a one-on-one conversation like this. So I'm always welcome to have you here on and talking on crossover commerce. We'll make sure it's not another year before you come on, but I appreciate you sharing your insights to everyone here today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate getting on.
Yep, we'll catch you next time, and we'll stay in touch for sure. So thank you again, Elizabeth Green of Junglr, and thank you everyone else for coming on Crossover Commerce. This is episode, again, I keep losing the number, 239. We're almost at 240, so I'm just going to stick with 240. 240 is starting tomorrow. We have another episode coming live with you on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. Again, thanks to Elizabeth Green from Junglr, our friend of the show, who was kind enough to come back and talk about, you know, one of those nuances that every person needs to learn and grow and gravitate towards and help educate their own business to move forward and be better in this business. So stay tuned. She has a YouTube channel also she didn't talk about, but make sure you subscribe to that and make sure you catch all of her content on LinkedIn. It's just fantastic. Lots of engagement, lots of thought leadership there if you're a PPC person or you just want to understand the paid ad side of things on Amazon. She's your person. One of the few people I always refer to for thought leadership. So make sure you check her out and follow her on LinkedIn. Otherwise, this is Crossover Commerce. Thanks again, Elizabeth, for coming on, and we'll catch you guys next time on another episode. Again, tomorrow, tune in live where we will be back here in my corner of the internet. Take care.